Greetings to all of you. Today I will tell you a story entitled, The Space Between the Grains of Sand. With the message, learn to prioritize what truly matters. And don't forget, no matter how busy life becomes, there is always room for a cup of coffee with friends. Please join me and listen. Title: The Space Between the Grains of Sand. Chapter 1: The Noise of Ambition. Autumn in Cambridge, Massachusetts, always carried a beauty that was at once melancholy and hurried. The old oak trees across the Harvard University campus had begun to turn a brilliant red and fading gold, scattering leaves across the red brick pathways. But Jason Miller had no time to admire them. At 21, Jason was the embodiment of the new generation, American dream, a 3.9 GPA. President of the Economics Student Association, and currently working an unpaid internship for 60 hours a week at a financial firm in Boston. He subsisted on black coffee with no sugar, 4 hours of fitful sleep a night, and a perpetual, gnawing fear that he would be left behind. Jason's phone buzzed in the pocket of his denim jacket. Mom calling. He glanced at the screen, sighed, and slid his finger to decline the call. This was the third time this week he had rejected her. "I'm busy, Mom. I'll call you back later." He mumbled a familiar incantation, one he knew was a lie. He was racing against the clock to get to the final lecture of the semester, Applied Philosophy, with Professor Arthur Sterling. Professor Sterling was a campus legend. He didn't teach students how to make money, he taught them why they wanted to make money in the first place. Rumor had it he was once a powerful CEO on Wall Street before leaving it all behind after a mysterious incident to come here and teach. His classes never used PowerPoint slides, had no syllabus, and consisted only of raw, unvarnished dialogue. Jason pushed open the heavy oak door of the lecture hall. The room was already packed. The smell of old books, damp wool from the fog, and the distinct scent of exam season stress hung in the air. He found a seat in the back row next to Sarah, his scholarship rival. "You look terrible, Miller," Sarah whispered, her eyes not leaving her notebook. "You have dark circles under your eyes like a panda." "That is the price of excellence, Sarah," Jason retorted, opening his laptop. "You should try it sometime." The bell rang. The entire auditorium fell silent. Chapter 2: The Empty Jar. Professor Sterling walked in. At 70, he still maintained an upright posture. His silver hair combed neatly back, and his sharp blue eyes seemed to pierce right through the soul of anyone he looked at. He carried no briefcase. In his hands, he held only an old cardboard box. He placed the box on the teacher's desk and slowly removed a large, empty glass jar, the kind people usually use for pickling cucumbers. Next, he pulled out a bag of golf balls. The class watched in silence. No one dared to type on their keyboards. Sterling began dropping the golf balls into the jar. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of the hard balls hitting the glass echoed dryly in the quiet room. He dropped them in until the balls reached the rim of the jar and he couldn't fit a single one more. He looked up, scanned the room, and asked in a warm, deep voice, "Can you tell me, is this jar full?" "Yes," a student in the front row answered quickly. The class nodded in agreement. It was clearly full. Sterling smiled, a cryptic smile. "Is it really?" He reached back into the cardboard box and pulled out a bag of small pebbles. He slowly poured the pebbles into the jar. He shook the glass lightly. The pebbles trickled into the open spaces between the golf balls, sliding to the bottom, filling the larger gaps. The rattling sound was oddly satisfying. He asked again, "How about now? Is the jar full?" This time, a ripple of chuckles went through the room. The students were starting to get it. "It seems full," Jason spoke up from the back row, his voice carrying a hint of challenge. He wanted to see what game the old man was playing. "Seems, Mr. Miller?" Sterling looked straight at Jason, his gaze making the young man flinch. The professor bent down for a third time. He pulled out a bag of fine sand. He poured the sand into the jar. The tiny grains flowed like water, filling every microscopic crevice remaining between the golf balls and the pebbles. The jar was now truly packed solid. There was not a pocket of air left. Now, Sterling dusted the sand off his hands. I want you to imagine that this jar is your life. Chapter 3. Defining Fulfillment. He stepped off the podium and walked down the aisle between the rows of seats. The golf balls, he began, his voice resonating, are the most important things. Your family, your children, your health, your true friends, and your burning passions, the things that, if everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still be full. He paused right next to Jason's desk. The pebbles are the other things that matter. But they are secondary. Your job, the house you live in, the car you drive, they are necessary, but they are replaceable. He turned and walked back toward the podium, his voice turning more serious. And the sand is everything else. The small stuff, the meaningless Facebook messages, the obligatory parties, the road rage in traffic, or worrying about what other people think of the shoes you're wearing. Sterling placed both hands on the desk, looking straight into the eyes of hundreds of young students hungry for success. If you put the sand into the jar first, he said slowly, emphasizing every word, there will be no room for the pebbles or the golf balls. Life works the same way. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, on frivolous ambitions, you will never have room for the things that truly matter. Jason felt his chest tighten. He remembered his mother's phone call. She was calling to tell him that his dad had to go to the hospital for a heart checkup. But he had been too busy with his internship report to answer. He remembered the weekends buried in the library instead of going on a hike with his girlfriend, who had broken up with him last month because you love your CV more than you love me. He had filled his jar with sand. He was drowning in it. Beside him, Sarah had stopped writing too. She was biting her lip, her eyes watering. Perhaps she, too, realized what she was trading away. Chapter 4. The Bitter and the Sweet. A heavy silence blanketed the lecture hall. The air was thick with regret. Everyone was reflecting on the jar of their own soul. Suddenly, a timid hand went up in the middle row. It was Mike, a guy who usually dozed off in class. Professor, Mike hesitated, I get your point, but, I mean, modern life is hard. We need pebbles to survive. We need good jobs to support our golf ball families. How do we balance it? Sterling gave a gentle smile. He liked practical questions. That is a great question. Mike, no one is telling you not to make money. But remember the order of priority. Do not let your work, the pebbles, crush your family, the golf balls. And most importantly, do not let the sand fill your eyes. Suddenly, Sterling bent down under the desk one last time. He pulled out 2 paper cups from the Starbucks on the corner. Still steaming, the aroma of roasted coffee wafted through the air, breaking the tension. He poured the dark, rich coffee into the jar that was already packed full of sand, pebbles, and golf balls. The brown liquid seeped through the sand, filling the microscopic voids that the naked eye couldn't see, until the jar truly could not hold another drop. The class gasped in surprise. A few giggles broke out, lighter than before. Professor, Jason couldn't help himself, blurting out, so, what does the coffee represent? Professor Sterling lifted the jar, holding it up to the ceiling light. The wet sand had turned dark, binding everything together even more tightly. I am very glad you asked. Miller, he winked. It just goes to show you one thing, no matter how busy your life may seem, no matter how full your jar appears to be to the point of suffocation. He paused, smiling warmly down at the young faces before him. There is always room for a cup of coffee with a friend. Chapter 5. The Silence After the Storm. The class ended in a roar of applause. Not polite, perfunctory applause, but the applause of awakening. The students didn't rush the exits as they usually did. They lingered, packing their bags slowly, or turning to speak to the person next to them. Jason closed his laptop. He looked over at Sarah. Hey, he said, his voice a little hoarse. Do you want to go grab a coffee? I know a place nearby that has great croissants. Sarah looked at him in surprise, and then her eyes lit up with a hint of a smile. What about the macroeconomics essay? The deadline is tonight. Screw it, Jason shrugged, feeling an invisible weight lift off his shoulders. That's just pebbles. I need to prioritize the coffee first. They walked out of the lecture hall building. The rain had stopped. The autumn air was crisp and cold, but Jason felt strangely warm. He stopped at the steps and pulled out his phone. "You go ahead and save a seat," Jason said to Sarah. "I need to make an important call." Sarah nodded and walked on, her heels clicking rhythmically on the brick path. Jason took a deep breath, looking up at the blue sky peeking through the brilliant red maple leaves. He dialed his mother back. The phone rang once, twice. "Hello? Jason, honey?" His mother's voice rang out, filled with worry and joy. "Mom." Jason's voice trembled as he felt the golf balls in his heart settling back into their rightful place. "I'm sorry I didn't answer. How is Dad?" I miss you guys so much." On the other end of the line, there was a sniffle, followed by a relieved laugh. And right there, in the middle of the courtyard of one of America's most prestigious universities, amidst the rush of people scrambling for fame and fortune, Jason Miller stood still. He realized that the jar of his life had never been full. But today, he had finally started to fill it the right way. Life isn't about trying to stuff everything in, it is about knowing what to put in first. And always saving room for a cup of coffee. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any meaningful stories.